I count myself as a level.
Move forward.
We can tell who's got stamina down there, Roger.
These are the cheap seats.
So, the next item, the other item on our agenda is the other financial matters, which is to make a final decision on the level of precept for 24-25. As members will remember, we deferred this to tonight because we wanted to make sure if there was any further information that we had in terms of how we might need to address any increase in budget. The situation from Somerset is still the same as was reported last time. There is an intention for Somerset to have to, because of its own budgetary constraints, encourage towns and parishes to take on more things within their own areas. For some towns, they may well take on whole services from what was the former districts. We're certainly hearing through the grapevine at the moment that Bridgewater are looking to take on large sections of what was the Clean Surroundings organisation at Sedgemoor, and potentially sell those services on to neighbouring parishes should they wish to have them. They're looking at something in the region of potentially doubling their current precept. Other parishes, more like the size of ourselves, aren't really in a position to take on those services, but may do an extension of things like we do already with our verge maintenance and other similar things. Some parishes are going to be hit worse than us, so there are some places that, whereas we look after and own our own village green, others have them owned and maintained by what was Sedgemoor and is now Somerset. They may well find that they're going to be responsible for taking those costs on, which will have a bigger impact on them, because obviously we're already doing it. But there will be potential reductions in services, and the proposal that will be coming forward in a minute on the screen when Owen's there will be to look as to whether we need to set a sum of money aside so that we have the ability to take up those issues should we wish to. One that we currently have, or two things that we currently have, is Sedgemoor currently do our toilet cleaning. We don't know whether they'll still be in a position to do that, or if it will cost more. We might have to look for another contractor. Also, things like dog bins, we currently pay Sedgemoor for those to be emptied. Some other parishes already have private contractors who do those, and we don't know whether Somerset will continue to offer those services. So that's the sort of background as to why we're coming back to have a look at the budget and why potentially we might need to look to put some money aside to cover that.
Well, the issue that came out of the last meeting, as you know, we agreed a budget, but the budget was subject to one item in particular, which was the special projects. And I don't know if you remember, I sent an email out to you showing you what would happen with the various levels. So in other words, if it was 2,000, 5,000, 7,000, whatever, what it would do to the precept. The actual figure is, I put in there just for the purposes of this exercise, on the special project, which is further down. There it is, special projects, this one here. I put in 7,000. Now bear in mind we didn't have anything there at all originally, so by putting the £7,000 in, that effectively increases the potential for a higher level of precept. But we're only talking about, again, as we were talking about earlier, small, very small amounts of money, and that's got nothing to do with the shop whatsoever. This is purely special projects that might need to be incurred. I'm thinking really of things like flood action plan, that may need some funds. We've got footpath issues, I know that needs sorting out. Hill Lane car park needs some money spent up there for security, fencing, etc. So these are all things that could come into that special projects calculation. Now, I say we'll take it out completely, and we'll be more or less back to where we were last time around. Precept calculator, which I'm afraid is wonky, and I don't know why, it's on the screen. Shows, the most important thing is it shows 60,807, which is to an increase of 20% on the year we're currently in. So we were 50,000, about another 10,000 roughly. So about 20% increase, and that's with 7,000 in the special projects. If you reduce the 7,000 to say 5,000 or 4,000, proportionally, that percentage will come down. So I just need to know from you what you feel about the increase. Plenty of parish councils have done this sort of increase, 20%, plenty.
Colin, and then Andy.
Owen, what was the increase before you applied the 7,000?
It was about 4%, I seem to remember, Paul, wasn't it?
So
About 4%.
a £7,000 increase gives a 13%.
Well, let me just take it out. Let me just take the figure out a minute.
Because our budget was about 50-ish, so
I've just
7
taken
is
it
going
out.
to be about 14%-ish.
So if we take, I've taken that figure out completely.
Six,
Comes out
I suppose so.
6%. So it's another 14% for £7,000
Yeah, because okay.
effectively. And that £7,000 really is there to cover costs that will be incurred.
If I come to Andy, then back to
Oh,
Colin.
sorry. Yeah.
Just two questions. First question is, do we know whether we're going to get any relief from Central Council, from Somerset, from this, or is this going to be just a straightforward handball, no addition from them?
If they ask for us to carry out services, they will not be sending any money down with it.
No, definitely not.
Definitely not.
Okay, so first question. Second question, I know we're saying it's a small calculation for Band D. We talking on more than 10 or less than 10, roughly, pounds per month?
Less.
Okay, so that means at the moment we would be going back to the parish and saying roughly £10 for the shop and circa £6 to £8 for.
Because that's all, the shop is already baked in, remember?
Yeah, yeah.
That's already in those figures, and it was in this year's figures as well.
And that's why it's in the 6%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, we're saying that this 20% includes the shop and the fact we're not going to get any support for services from Somerset Council if it comes down.
No,
The shop is already,
Sorry.
so the shop is in the base budget,
Shop
so
is
any
in.
increase over that is.
And in fact, I think when I did them originally, we were looking at higher interest rates, so therefore I think
Yes.
the shop figure is, actually, when I changed it, I thought I might have done, I changed it already to reflect the latest figure. 11,000.
Isn't that the one that's the current?
Sorry, yes, I'm looking at the wrong one, aren't I? 12,400, so that actually would be
So
down.
that should come down.
That could come down by 1,200 quid, basically, to reflect the current interest rates, and maybe further down when we get.
The indications centrally are we're going to see lower interest rates second term next year.
And also bear in mind that even if we draw down a quarter in April, it means for the first part of the year we won't be at the full rate of 11,000 because we will only be borrowing a quarter for less period. So we'll have some spare capital.
Oh, and could you change that 12.4 down to 11.2?
Yeah, and just see what we can
And just see where it leaves us.
Go into the calculator. 5%. Drops down by 1%, basically. 6, wasn't it?
That's significant.
So then if you put the 7 back in, where does that then put us?
I was thinking-
19,
I was thinking-
26, but
I was thinking 59, I think, but I don't know. So,
Miss,
Colin and then John.
As the comments last week, much of our costs are, if you like, fixed. There's only one section which, can you show it?
village maintenance.
It comes under village maintenance, which is where we are, the services that we provide. And I think we do need to have some money in our back pocket to address some of the issues that the flooding has shown over the last couple of weeks, in particular at car park which needs looking at Hill Lane, and footpaths are in a bit of a sorry state at the moment. So we do need to have something in our back pocket, and I would propose that we apply £7,000 and at least have some flexibility to do things as and when we need to. I think it's only responsible.
Yeah,
True, that's the only section you can change. That's the only section you can
John.
make an effectively change.
Two observations after thinking after our last meeting. One is there's going to be a perception that council tax is going up, but the services are being crossed off. So people are generally going to be saying, hang on a sec, I'll be paying for this, surely these things are going to be knocked off and reduced. So I do think we need to be conscious of that percentage figure. Secondly, from a visibility and transparency point of view, I think it's important that we do just break this Excel down a little bit more and just detail as much as we can where these money are going. Personally, I think special projects is a very woolly area and leaves it very vague to anybody to then a justification. So anything we can do to add and bullet that figure and just break it out. It may be that we vote it's the same figure, but just as much information as possible.
John, with respect, the whole idea of special projects is to have something that is available that we don't know what's going to happen. So in other words, when the flooding occurred the other night, we know we need to dig out a drain, okay? We know that up at Hill Lane. So we don't know what the special projects are going to be. It's like an emergency fund. Instead of calling it special projects, just call it an emergency fund. Because if you could stroke the crystal ball and tell us what we're going to need over the past year, then I'd be delighted. But you can't do that.
I think that's one of the problems we've got this year is that we have our own unknowns, but we have the whole set of unknowns coming down from Somerset as well, because to be brutally frank, they don't know what it is they're going to be able to do. As I say, there's discussions about moving certain services to other councils. Again, what they don't know is if they hand out certain lumps of those services to town councils, how much critical mass have they still got left in the centre to deal with the rural parishes? And there's a lot of rural parishes raising this with Somerset at the moment to say, look, how are you going to make sure you still can do the services even at a lower level, because they may just not have the ability. We were advised at full council today that there are going to be another tranche of redundancies coming down the track in Somerset as well. So we just don't know which services will be left. The one thing that is clear is that the things that we get at the moment that are things like for amenity, that aren't the statutory health and safety elements, are likely to be things that go. Which, as I say, we've already started to pick up in this village anyway, with things like doing the maintenance of the Fox and Goose Junction, various other contracts that we have around doing hedges, because technically that would have been Highways' responsibility, but because we want it done to a higher level, they weren't prepared to meet it. The difference is their level of what they will be prepared to do is going to be even lower in the future. It'll just be what has to be done in terms of safety. Aileen.
I'm all for this, but I think knock out the special projects and just leave it as an emergency fund. Cross out, because special projects means something that's planned already. You've got a project already. So in other words, you're planning ahead for another project, which we haven't got. So if you say emergency funds, then that means if there's an emergency, at least people understand then that emergency fund is for emergencies. I think special projects means that you're doing a project. Tomorrow we're doing a project, so we're not, are we? So I think have it that way, word it that way.
Okay.
Be a lot better.
Amanda, then Tracy, and then Malcolm.
I was going to say, yeah, I agree with what Adi said, but I think it needs to be the higher figure. It's like you said, we don't want to find dog bins overflowing or other horrors, and I think we need the higher figure.
So I think the 7.
The 7, yeah.
Tracy and then Malcolm.
I was going to say, I think we can argue the higher figure because we just don't know what's happening, and then we can review this time next year, and we might be able to bring that down, especially Somerset are offering things that we thought may have gone, so it's just a buffer really, isn't it?
Malcolm, and then Colin.
If Aid is making a proposal of that changing the name, then I will second that.
So yours was the change of the name and the 7.
Emergency fund.
Yeah, emergency fund and 7, yeah.
Okay, and that's seconded by Malcolm. Then
Yeah.
Colin.
Yeah, just as an aside, I think it should be agreed that it should only be used for emergency
Yes.
funding.
Yes.
So it goes into our reserves,
Yeah.
and if we want to reduce it next year, we don't spend it, we want to reduce it next year, we build up a reserve for emergency funding. Because we don't know.
I mean, ultimately, what we're doing tonight, though, is setting the precept. How we decide
how
on
we
the
do
budget
it,
will be
yeah.
down to the
Yeah.
council.
Yeah.
Can I just say something, John? I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, obviously, the more detail you can put on a spreadsheet, the better it is. But I have to say to you, this spreadsheet has been seen by my colleagues in other councils, and they think this is the most elaborate spreadsheet I've ever seen. I'm not sure how much more detail I'd want to be putting on it, because it would almost become unworkable. If you make spreadsheets too big, no one really understands any of it. So I think it's probably the right level of size, but the title of the headings are perfect.
So I think in terms of the detail as well, you've now got the Scribe programme for as we're going through the year, where that has an awful lot of detail in terms of breaking it down into budgets, doesn't it? So we should make sure that comes
It
forward.
does help them. Yeah.
I think what the parish understands as well is that if we was to get contractors in to do what you lot done the other day, it's going to cost thousands. We're doing everything off our own back. A group of us, we go out and do the paths, the roads, whatever. You know, so if you was to get contractors in to do that, it's going to cost you more than something. It costs you 25,000 a year to get people to do that. But because we're doing it ourselves, we are saving ourselves a hell of a lot of money. Residents realise that. Parish realise that because we've all been praised for doing stuff.
I mean,
Colin, and then I'll.
we did at one stage in previous years consider whether we should be putting in an emergency plan. I mean, just supposing we had an emergency in the village where we had to move people out of their homes and put them in the village hall overnight or maybe for a night. There's no emergency plan in place. We started to do it with the help of Kim, but it because we didn't have an emergency, it's like flooding. It gets put to one side.
Yeah.
But all these things should raise their heads. You know, we've got an emergency fund. Where's your emergency plan? Who do you call in? Who do you contact? Who do you phone? Where do you get the stuff from? So it's.
I tell you, they phone Bob, he phones David, he phones me.
Yeah,
We all scramble.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments that members have? So as things stand, we have a proposal which is that we rename that to the emergency fund, and it's £7,000 goes into that, which then results in a precept of fractionally over 60,000, which is about 19%.
Around 60,000, is that?
I think that would be marvellous.
Rather than £9.70.
Unless if you want to go to 59,999.99, but I think 60 makes sense.
Yeah.
Is everyone happy then we go with that? So that's the proposal. All those in favour, please show. That is again unanimous. So that's clearly carried.
I will notify Somerset Council.
Excellent. That brings us to the end of tonight's agenda. So thank you all very much. There are we can take matters of report, but it really we've got.
The agenda needs to be approved. I sent down an agenda for the 3rd of January because obviously it comes so soon after the Christmas break. I can't really do much with it. So I put down what I think to be a decent agenda. So if there's any items now that you think should be added to it, let me know now.
I was just going to say, back to emergencies, did anything happen about, we were saying about signs and whatever, we don't know. If we suddenly have a flood again, we might need to rush out and close the road or something. Did we look into those signs?
I think we need to, because I think we agreed at the last meeting we were going to look at the two different types.
The road closure and the
arrow. Yeah, if we can make a note of that, Owen, that needs to be, because that was from the last meeting.
Because we've got the stuff in place that we can now close the road.
Colin?
Bob, on the flood action plan, I did send the flood action plan to Owen, and I think it should be circulated to everyone. So I've redacted the old members, so they've now disappeared. We need some new people in there. But I think the flood plan should be looked at and read to make sure that
So
you're
we'll just
happy with
circulate
it.
that around.
Because it needs to be published, we said it would be published on our website, and we need to follow that through, so it just needs another couple of hours on it.
It's on
Flood
January.
flood action plan is
It's
basically
on
on
the agenda.
Yes.
the, it's an item of consideration. We've got AMPR update, community shop build, any issues resulting from that. Ideas for annual parish meeting would be useful next time around. Probably reaching out youngers, whatever, strimmer, first aid training, flood action group, and fish and chip van. They're all things that are on the 3rd of January consideration list.
In terms of the flood action group, we will need to elect that at the next meeting. So if members are prepared to serve on that, can you let people know? Because we'll need to have proposals for who's going to go on there. And if people don't know, we won't know who's up for it. So that would be good. Are there any items that any members have other than that we've just been through for the next agenda? Malcolm?
Well, as matter as a report, do you mean?
Yeah, we can take that.
Yes, I have concerns about the total closure of part of Brent Street for 12 days. It says closure for complete,
Yeah.
so it means 24 hours.
Yeah, to be frank, the sign is not right. I think they have been, I think they're doing it deliberately because they want to minimise the amount of traffic coming through. The actual notice says it's closed between the hours, I think it's 8 and 6. I've sent in a note to the Highways Department asking for further information. I've been told so far that they will be maintaining access for residents, but I'm waiting for further information, and once I've got that, I will then circulate that. Because there are something like, even just in the stretch they're closing, 70 or 80 properties. So
And roads off as well.
yes, and you've also got the school will be open at that time. So having parents trying to negotiate it will be an issue. So
And,
we just need to get clarity. But that I will come back to you on and let you know as soon
Yes,
as I
and
hear.
also a lot of residents at that end don't have off-street parking.
Yes. Yes. Okay, no, we'll certainly report back
Thank
as
you.
soon as I can get information from Highways on that. It has generated a lot of interest in the village. At least it shows people read the signs. So. Any other comments or questions? If not, thank you all very much for your attendance tonight, and we'll close the meeting. Thank you.